You think the reason she hasn't chosen you is because she has too many options. But the real reason she hasn't chosen you is because you haven't given her a reason to stop looking. Let that sit for a second. Because that distinction right there is the entire difference between a man who gets chosen and a man who gets kept in rotation. And if you're watching this, there's a version of you that already knows that's true. There's a version of you that has felt the sting of being the guy she talked to every day, laughed with every night, confided in every time something went wrong, and then watched her choose someone else. Someone who, from the outside, didn't even seem to try as hard as you did. Someone who didn't text back as fast, didn't compliment her as much, didn't make himself as available as you made yourself. And you sat there thinking, how? How does that keep happening? What does he have that I don't? And I'm going to answer that question today, fully, honestly. Without sugarcoating it, without making you feel better about the wrong things, and without selling you a fantasy that keeps you stuck. Because the men who stay stuck are the men who keep getting comfortable explanations. And you deserve the uncomfortable one. You deserve the truth. Before we go further, if this kind of no-nonsense clarity is something you need in your life on a regular basis, hit subscribe right now. Not for me, for you. Because most of what the world is feeding you right now is noise, and you need somewhere to come back to that strips all of that away and talks to you straight. That's what this channel is. Subscribe, stay close, because the lessons in this video are the beginning of a much longer conversation. Now, let's talk about what's really going on. Here is what most men believe about attraction. They believe it is a performance. They believe that if they perform well enough, if they say the right things, show up consistently enough, prove their loyalty hard enough, demonstrate their value loudly enough, that eventually a woman will look at all that effort and reward it with commitment. They believe attraction is something you earn through demonstration, through resume, through sustained, visible effort over time. They believe that being available, being reliable, being the man she can always count on, is the thing that tips the scale in their favor. That belief is killing you. Not because loyalty is bad, not because reliability is wrong, not because showing up matters less than I'm about to say, but because you have been applying the right qualities in the framework of the wrong equation. You've been solving for the wrong variable. And no matter how much you optimize your effort inside a broken equation, the answer never changes. Here is what attraction actually is. Attraction is not a response to effort. Attraction is a response to presence. And presence is not the same thing as availability. Let me say that again because I need you to really hear it. Presence is not the same thing as availability. A man can be available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and have zero presence. A man can be difficult to reach, unpredictable in his schedule, and have the kind of presence that pulls a room, pulls a woman, without a single deliberate strategy. And the difference between those two men is not their schedule. The difference is what they are when they show up. The available man shows up to fill a need, her need. He's there because being there makes her comfortable. He's there because being there earns him points. He's there because absence feels like risk, and risk feels like losing, and he is not ready to lose. He is orbiting her reality. Her mood is his weather. Her approval is his oxygen. He has, without realizing it, made her the center of a universe in which he plays a supporting role. The present man shows up from himself. He's there because he chose to be there. He's there because his life has direction, and this is a moment in that direction where she belongs. He is not orbiting her. He is inviting her to orbit something that is already moving. He doesn't need her approval to feel like the day was good. He doesn't need her response to know his message had value. He exists fully and completely without her confirmation, and that right there is the most attractive thing a human being can be in front of another human being. That's called having a center of gravity. And women, whether they articulate it or not, are drawn toward men with gravitational pull, not men who attach themselves to hers. Now here's where it gets harder, because I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, but I do have a life. I have a career. I have ambitions. I have things I care about. I'm not one of those guys who just waits by the phone. And to that I say, are you sure? Because having a life is not the same as living from that life. You can have all the external markers of a directed man and still be emotionally running your decisions through the filter of what she thinks. You can have a career and still be checking her location. You can have friends and still be canceling plans the moment she becomes available. You can have ambitions and still be quietly putting them on hold every time she needs emotional support that you pour from an empty cup because you never refill it because she is where you spend your energy. Having a life is not enough. You have to be living from it, rooted in it. You have to be a man whose primary relationship is with his own standards, his own direction, and his own character. Everything else, including her, connects to that, not instead of that. And this is the root cause. This is why it keeps happening. Not because you aren't good enough, not because you aren't attractive enough, not because the world is unfair and women are irrational and you just got unlucky again. It keeps happening because somewhere deep in the wiring of how you were taught to relate to women, or how you figured it out on your own through trial and error, you picked up the idea that self-sacrifice signals value, that the more you give, the more you are worth, that making yourself small and accommodating is the same thing as being loving and safe. And that idea, as understandable as it is, as well-intentioned as it is the single most consistent way a man can communicate to a woman at the subconscious level that he does not fully value himself. Think about that for a moment. Every time you override your own needs to accommodate hers without her asking. Every time you swallow your opinion because you don't want to risk disagreement. Every time you play it safe with your words to avoid any chance of conflict. Every time you make yourself more agreeable than you actually are, you are performing a kind of emotional self-abandonment. And women can feel that. They can't always name it. They won't usually explain it. But they feel the absence of a spine the way you feel a missing step in the dark. Something is off. Something is not solid. And instinctively, without judgment, but with a very real biological response, she pulls back. Not because she doesn't like you, but because she cannot trust something that doesn't hold its own shape. That's called losing integrity. Not moral integrity, structural integrity, like a building that bends too much in the wind. Beautiful maybe, but you're not going to live there. Now let's talk about what this costs you, because I don't think you fully understand the price you are paying for this pattern. The first thing it costs you is the relationship itself. The very thing you are trying to protect by being agreeable and available and endlessly accommodating, you are actively destroying by doing so. Because women do not fall in love with men they can control. They fall in love with men they cannot fully predict. Not in a game-playing way. Not in an anxious, is he actually interested way, but in a genuine, this man has depth and I keep discovering it way. When you make yourself entirely transparent, entirely predictable, entirely devoted to her mood and her needs at the cost of your own, you remove the very mystery that would have kept her curious. You become furniture. And nobody falls passionately in love with furniture, no matter how well designed it is. The second thing it costs you is yourself. This one is worse, because you can lose a woman and recover. You can lose a relationship and grow from it. But the longer you run this pattern, the more erosion happens to the man underneath it. You start to confuse devotion with self-erasure. You start to believe that the reason you keep losing is that you haven't yet erased enough. That maybe if you gave more, tried harder, needed less, expected nothing, maybe then she would stay. And so you go deeper and deeper into the deficit. You become less and less of yourself in pursuit of being more and more for her. And one day you look up and you're not even sure who you are outside of what she needs. That is a crisis. That is a quiet, unspoken, deeply painful crisis that millions of men are living in right now, and nobody is talking about it loudly enough. The third thing it costs you is your standard of love. When you accept less than you deserve in silence, when you accept half effort, inconsistency, emotional unavailability from her while giving the fullest version of yourself, you teach yourself that this is what love looks like. You train your nervous system to feel comfortable in imbalance. And then even when you meet a woman who is genuinely available, genuinely interested, genuinely reciprocal, she feels wrong. She feels too easy, too sure, not exciting enough. And you reach back toward the chaos because that's what you've been conditioned to call desire. That's called trauma bonding at a soft level. And it keeps you in a cycle that has nothing to do with her and everything to do with the relationship you have with your own worth. So now you understand what's happening and why. Now let's talk about what the solution actually looks like. Not in theory, not in a list of tips, in a picture. Because I want you to see a man, and then I want you to decide if you want to become him. Picture a man. He is not perfect. He has flaws, he has history, he has mornings where he doesn't want to get up, and evenings where the doubt creeps in. He is not a monument. He is a person. But there is something about him that is unmistakably, undeniably different from most men you've observed. It is not his looks. It is not his income. It is not his social status, though all of those things may accompany it. It is the way he occupies the space around him. It is the way he speaks, not loudly, not constantly, but with deliberate weight. When he says something, it lands. When he doesn't say something, that too carries weight. He is not performing his confidence. He is not narrating his worth. He simply is. He has a life, not as a strategy, not as a tactic to seem busy and therefore desirable. He has a life because he genuinely, actively cares about his own becoming. He wakes up with a direction. He has things he is building. He has standards he holds himself to that have nothing to do with whether anyone is watching or approving. His purpose is not contingent on external validation because his relationship with himself is not a negotiation. He knows what he values. He knows what he will and will not accept. And he is at peace with the fact that those standards will cost him some people, and equally at peace with the understanding that those standards are exactly what will attract the right ones. This man does not chase. He does not chase attention. He does not chase affection. He does not chase validation. This does not mean he is cold. This does not mean he is unavailable. This does not mean he plays games or manufactures distance to seem mysterious. It means he is genuinely anchored in his own life, and from that anchor, he can extend warmth, interest, and attention as choices, not as desperation dressed in good manners. This man has boundaries, real ones, not boundaries as a power move, not boundaries as a way to punish, but boundaries as an expression of self-respect. When something doesn't align with who he is, he says so, calmly, clearly, without drama. He doesn't build resentment in silence. He doesn't let things accumulate until they explode. He addresses things when they matter, in proportion to how they matter, and then he lets them go. He does not carry score. He does not replay conversations in his head at 3 a.m, wondering if he said the right thing. He said what was true, and he trusts that truth was enough. This man is emotionally available, but not emotionally bottomless. He has feelings, deep ones. He can be vulnerable in the right context with the right person, but his emotional depth is a depth you earn access to. It is not the first thing you see. It is not the thing he uses to bond through weakness or to make a woman feel needed. It is the reward of sustained intimacy, genuine trust built slowly, connection that has proven itself through time and reciprocity. He does not dump his emotions at the door to seem sensitive. He does not weaponize his wounds to generate sympathy. He processes his life, and then he brings himself, whole, clear, present, into the relationship. This man makes her feel safe. Not safe in the sense that nothing hard ever comes up. Safe in the sense that she knows where he stands. She knows what he thinks. She knows he will not disappear because a conversation got uncomfortable. She knows he will not spiral because she had a bad day and took it out on him. She knows that his sense of who he is does not depend on whether she is happy with him in this exact moment. And that consistency, that steadiness, that refusal to be destabilized, that is the deepest kind of safety a woman can feel from a man. That is what makes her want to come back. That is what makes her want to stay. This man chooses. He does not wait to be chosen. He does not make himself available and then hold his breath, hoping she selects him out of the lineup. He looks at who she is, truly, clearly, without the fog of infatuation distorting his vision. And he decides whether she is worthy of what he has to offer. And that decision, that discernment, communicates something to her that no amount of compliments or gestures ever could. It communicates that being with him means something, that he did not arrive by default, that she is not simply whoever was available. She was chosen. And being chosen by a man who knows his worth is one of the most powerful feelings a woman can experience. Now you have the picture. Now let's build the man. Because this is not fantasy. This is not some rare genetic lottery that produces a man like this once a generation. This is a set of decisions. This is a practice. This is something you build day by day, through what you do and what you stop doing and what you redirect. And here is exactly what that looks like in real, practical, non-negotiable terms. Stop making her your emotional center right now. Today, not eventually, not after this relationship, not when you find a woman who deserves the real you. Now, your emotional stability, your sense of your own worth, your experience of a good day versus a bad day, those cannot be rented out to another person's mood. If she's happy and you're happy and she's cold and you're spiraling, you have outsourced your inner life. And that is not her fault. She didn't ask for that responsibility. You gave it to her by default, and now it's making her feel the weight of something she was never supposed to carry. Reclaim your emotional authority. This means you can care how she feels without your well-being depending on it. It means you can be affected by her without being controlled by her. That is not detachment. That is emotional maturity. Stop over-explaining yourself. This one is subtle and deeply destructive. When you over-explain your decisions, your schedule, your choices, when you offer justifications before they're even asked for, you are communicating that you expect to be questioned. You are communicating that your choices require approval to be valid. You are making yourself a subject of her court rather than an equal standing beside her. You do not need to explain why you can't make Tuesday work. You do not need to preemptively apologize for having a life. State your reality simply, invite hers into the conversation, and trust that the two of you can navigate it without you first having to perform your reasonableness. A man who trusts himself does not audition his decisions. Stop mirroring her investment level as a strategy. I know this is advice you've heard. Match her energy. Don't invest more than she does. And there's something partially true in it, but here is where men misapply it. When you mirror her investment as a strategy, you are still letting her lead your behavior. You are still orienting yourself by her. The goal is not to strategically match her energy. The goal is to actually be so rooted in your own direction that your investment in any relationship is a genuine reflection of where you are, not a calculation based on where she is. When your investment comes from your values rather than from tactical response, it carries a completely different weight. She can feel the difference between a man who's managing her and a man who's genuinely living. Stop tolerating inconsistency in silence. This is important. If her behavior is creating confusion or discomfort for you, and you are absorbing it, smiling through it, and telling yourself it's fine, you are not being easygoing. You are being complicit in the erosion of your own dignity. Address it, not with drama, not with ultimatums, not with passive-aggressive withdrawal, but with directness. "Hey, I've noticed this, and I want to understand it," is a sentence that a man with self-respect can say without his world ending. If she responds to that honesty with defensiveness or dismissal, that is information you needed. If she responds with openness, you've just created more genuine intimacy than a month of silence ever could have. Either way, you win. Silence only benefits men who are afraid of the answer. Do redirect your energy toward your mission daily, not as a trick, not to seem busy, genuinely. Get back in the room with the thing you are building. Get back in the gym. Get back to the creative work, the financial goal, the physical standard, the intellectual pursuit that makes you feel like a man who is becoming someone. Because here is the practical reality. A man who has something meaningful that he is moving toward every day does not have the psychological bandwidth to be obsessing over whether one woman's mood today means something significant about his future. He is too busy becoming the man that attracts good things by default. He is building his gravity. He does not have to manufacture mystery because his actual life is interesting. He does not have to play games because his actual life creates natural tension between what he's doing and how much time he can offer. Purpose is not a pickup strategy. Purpose is how you reclaim yourself. But it is also, not incidentally, one of the most attractive things you can build. Do show genuine interest without losing yourself in it. There is a kind of attention that feels like hunger, consuming, a little desperate, slightly uncomfortable to be on the receiving end of. And there is a kind of attention that feels like sunlight, warm, generous, not grasping, genuinely present. Cultivate the second kind. Ask real questions. Listen to the full answer before thinking of your next thing to say. Be curious about her, not as a research project aimed at figuring out how to keep her, but as a human being who you find genuinely worth understanding. Interest without agenda is one of the rarest and most powerful things you can give another person. She will remember how she felt in that conversation for the rest of her life. Not because you said something perfect, but because you were actually there. Do be willing to walk away. This is not a threat. This is not a performance. This is a quiet, firm understanding within yourself that your participation in any relationship is conditional on that relationship meeting a certain threshold of mutual respect, mutual investment, and genuine alignment. That threshold is yours to define, but you must define it. You must believe in it, and you must be genuinely willing to act on it when it's not being met. The willingness to walk away, not the performance of it, not the threat of it, not the strategic deployment of it, but the genuine, grounded acceptance that you would survive and ultimately flourish without this particular person is the single most powerful shift in your relational energy that you can make. Women can feel it, not because they are playing games and you just learn to play better, but because a man who knows he can leave and chooses to stay is communicating something entirely different than a man who stays because he cannot bear to leave. One is a gift, the other is a debt, and nobody wants to be someone's emotional debt. Now let's talk about what happens when you do this work, because I want you to have a clear picture of what the other side of this looks like, not as a reward framing, not as a do this and she'll choose you guarantee, but as an honest account of what changes. What changes first is how you feel about yourself in the context of relationships. You stop walking away from interactions wondering if you said the right thing. You stop lying awake, reconstructing conversations, looking for the moment you lost her. You stop grading yourself on whether she responded and how long it took and what tone she used. You develop what I can only describe as an internal solidity, not arrogance, not indifference, solidity. You know who you are. You know what you want. You know what you will and will not accept. And you walk through your relational life from that knowledge, not in constant search of it through other people's approval. What changes second is the quality of your interactions. When you stop performing, when you stop managing, when you stop trying to engineer her feelings toward you, the actual you becomes available. And the actual you is more interesting than the performance has ever been. You start having real conversations instead of auditions. You start experiencing genuine chemistry instead of manufactured tension. You start connecting at the level that most people never reach because most people are too busy managing impressions to actually be present. And presence, as I said at the beginning of this video, is the foundation of everything real. What changes third, and this is the one I want you to hear most clearly, is the kind of woman you attract. When you are running the pattern of self-erasure and over-availability, you attract women who are comfortable with that dynamic. Some of them are good people who have simply learned to take what is freely offered. Some of them are genuinely incompatible with you, but you never discover that because you never show them who you actually are. And some of them, frankly, have their own wounds that draw them toward dynamics where they hold all the power because power feels like safety to them. When you change the energy you bring, when you bring the version of yourself that has a center, has standards, has genuine direction, you attract a fundamentally different kind of woman, not because you became better bait, but because you became the kind of man that a woman with her own genuine wholeness is actually drawn to. Broken magnets attract broken magnets. Whole magnets attract something very, very different. And here is what I want to say about the women in your life right now, the one you're thinking about right now, the one this video made you think of. She is not the enemy of this story. She is not a villain. She is a person navigating her own complexity with her own wounds, her own patterns, her own version of trying to figure out what she wants and why she wants it. The reason she has options is not because she is manipulative. The reason she may not be choosing you right now is not because you are fundamentally unworthy. The reason things are not working is almost certainly the dynamic, the specific, fixable, learnable dynamic between who you have been showing up as and what she's been responding to. Dynamics change, men change, not through pretending, not through strategy, but through genuine, sustained, uncomfortable, worth it growth.